In 11th century England, one woman stood at the centre of power, Emma of Normandy. She was the daughter of a Norman duke, the wife of not one but two kings of England, and the mother of two more. Her marriages tied England, Denmark and Normandy together in a web of alliances, betrayals and dynastic struggle. Today we're diving into the fascinating story of Emma of Normandy's husbands, the men she was bound to, the kingdoms they ruled, and how her choices shaped the future of England itself. Æthelred the Unready was king of the English from 978 until 1013, and then again from 1014 until his death in 1016. He was born in 966 to King Edgar and Queen Æthelred, Edgar's third wife. Æthelred's father died suddenly in 975, leaving two young sons behind. The elder, Edward, was on the cusp of adulthood, whereas Æthelred was still too young. Edward was chosen as king, a council ruling in his stead until he reached adulthood. Edward reigned for only 3 years before he was murdered, either by nobles or servants of Æthelred's household. Many believed that Æthelred's mother had plotted against her stepson, and while no one was punished for a part in the crime, and Æthelred was crowned a month after the murder, his reign began in an atmosphere of suspicion which destroyed the prestige of the crown. Nevertheless, Æthelred's coronation took place with much rejoicing. Due to his age, his mother ruled as his regent with a group of councillors until 984, when Æthelred had reached adulthood. Æthelred abandoned most of his councillors and launched on policies which involved encroachment on church privileges. Æthelred married 2 times. His first marriage to Ælfgifu in 985 resulted in the births of 10 children: Ethelstan, Ecgbert, Edmund Ironside, Edred, Edvig, Edgar, Edith, Ælfgifu, Wulfhild, and a daughter became the abbess of Weirwell Abbey. His second marriage to Emma of Normandy in 1002 resulted in the births of 3 children: Edward the Confessor, Alfred, and Godgifu. For a number of years, England had experienced peace from the Danish invaders, but beginning in 980, small companies of Danish adventurers carried out a series of raids along the coast. Danish attacks started growing in severity from the early 990s. Æthelred's forces were comprised of infantry with a great number of mercenaries. He did not have substantial numbers of trained cavalry forces. During this period, the Normans offered shelter to the Danes returning from raids on England, which led to tensions between the English and Norman courts. Word of the tensions reached the Pope, and the Pope, Pope John XV, took steps to broker a peace between England and Normandy, which was ratified in 991 in Rouen. In August 991, a sizable Danish fleet began a campaign in the southeast of England. The battle that followed between the English and the Danes is recorded in the Old English poem, The Battle of Maldon, which describes the doomed but heroic attempt of the English to defend the coast of Essex against overwhelming odds. In the aftermath of Maldon, it was decided that the English would grant the tribute to the Danes. Yet this tribute did not stop the Danish campaigning in England, and in 994 they headed towards London. Æthelred met with the leaders of the Danish fleet and arranged an uneasy accord. A treaty was signed that provided for seemingly civilized arrangements between the then settled Danish companies and the English government. But the treaty also stipulated that the ravaging and murders of the previous year would be forgotten, and ended abruptly by stating that gold and silver would be paid to the raiders as a price for peace. In 994, Olaf Tryggvason, a Norwegian prince, was confirmed as Christian in a ceremony with King Æthelred as his sponsor. Olaf promised that he would never come back to England in hostility. Olaf then left England for Norway and never returned. In 997, Danish raids began again. Each time the Danes raided, Æthelred would pay for them to stop. But this did little to help. On the 13th of November 1002, Æthelred ordered the deaths of all Danish men in England to take place. Gunhilda, sister of Sweyn Forkbeard, King of Denmark, was said to have been among the victims. It is likely that Sweyn Forkbeard wanted to avenge his sister, and this was a primary motivation for Sweyn's invasion of Western England the following year. In 1004, Sweyn was in England and began his invasion. In this year, a nobleman of East Anglia met Sweyn in force and made an impression on the until then rampant Danish expedition. Though the English were defeated at this battle, he caused the Danes heavy losses and was nearly able to destroy their ships. The Danish army left England for Denmark in 1005. For the next 3 years, England was free from attack. But this would not last. In 1008, the government created a new fleet of warships, but was weakened when one of the commanders became a pirate, and the king and his council decided not to risk it in a general action. The Danish army of 1009 was the most formidable force to invade England since Æthelred became king. It harried England until it was bought off in April 1012. Sweyn then launched an invasion in 1013, intending to crown himself King of England. By the end of that year, the English resistance had collapsed and Sweyn had conquered the country, forcing Æthelred into exile in Normandy. But the situation changed suddenly when Sweyn died on the 3rd of February 1014. Sweyn's forces swore allegiance to his son, Cnut, but leading English noblemen restored Æthelred to the throne. Æthelred launched an expedition against Cnut. Æthelred first set out to recapture London, apparently with the help of Olaf Haraldsson. Olaf led a successful attack on London Bridge with a fleet of ships. He then went on to help Æthelred retake London and other parts of the country. Cnut and his army decided to withdraw from England in April 1014, leaving their English allies to suffer Æthelred's revenge. In 1016, Olaf left to concentrate his efforts on Western Europe, and Cnut returned to England. Æthelred's son, Edmund Ironside, revolted against his father and established himself in the north. Over the coming months, Cnut conquered most of England, and Edmund rejoined Æthelred in his efforts to fend off the Danes. On the 23rd of April 1016, King Æthelred died. Cnut was King of England from 1016 until 1035, King of Denmark from 1019 to 1035, and King of Norway from 1028 to 1035. The place and date of his birth are unknown. Cnut was the grandson of Mieszko I, a Polish ruler, through his mother. In 1013, he accompanied his father Sweyn Forkbeard to England. Cnut was in charge of a fleet at Gainsborough, and it was there he met his first wife, Elfgifu. They had 2 sons together, Sweyn and Harold. By the end of 1013, Cnut's father was King of England, but he died only months later, and Æthelred, the previous king, returned. Cnut and his men planned to attack, but Cnut deserted his allies and returned to Denmark. In 1015, he returned and began a long struggle to take the English throne. In April 1016, King Æthelred died. The English Witan or Council elected Cnut King of the English. But the councillors that were in London elected Edmund, Æthelred's eldest surviving son, as king. Cnut and Edmund went to war, with Cnut winning. They decided to divide the kingdom, but when Edmund died only a month later in November, Cnut took over the entire country. His first acts as king were to give Englishmen's estates to his Danish followers, have King Edmund's brother Æthelred killed, and had several prominent Englishmen killed or exiled. He exiled Edmund's sons to Sweden. Eventually, Englishmen were holding earldoms in Wessex and Mercia, and the Danish element to his rule decreased. By 1018, the Danes and the English reached an agreement. A draft of the treaty survives to this day and was written by Archbishop Wulfstan of York, who later drew up Cnut's laws. To gain support, Cnut married King Æthelred's widow, Emma of Normandy, in 1017. Emma's sons were living in Normandy. To do this, he set aside his first wife, Ælfgifu. This was to prevent the Duke of Normandy, Emma's brother, from helping his nephews to take the English throne for themselves. Emma and Cnut had 2 children together, Harthacnut and Gunhilda. The English helped Cnut secure his position as King of Denmark after the death of Cnut's brother in 1019. They also helped when Cnut's regent in Denmark, Ulf Jarl, his brother-in-law, joined the King of Norway and the King of Sweden in a coalition against Denmark. Though Cnut was defeated in the battle that followed, the Battle of the Holy River, terms were made and Cnut egged on the Norwegian landowners against their king, Olaf II Haraldsson, to drive him out in 1028. Cnut put his ex-wife Ælfgifu and son Sweyn in charge of Norway. Cnut travelled to Scotland in 1027, where he received recognition from 3 of the Scottish kings. Cnut's control over the Baltic trade route benefited the English, who profited greatly. Cnut proved an effective ruler who brought peace and prosperity. He was a generous and supportive donor to the church. In 1027, Cnut went on a pilgrimage to Rome and attended the coronation of the Holy Roman Emperor Conrad II. He secured reductions in tolls for English traders and pilgrims while there. Denmark also benefited from Cnut's friendship with the emperor, who surrendered Schleswig and the territory north of the Eider River in exchange for a marriage between the emperor's son Henry to Cnut's daughter Gunhilda. None of Cnut's successors inherited his qualities. His son Harold ruled England until 1040, and his son Harthacnut ruled Denmark from 1035 and England from 1040. Eventually, the English throne passed back to the old royal line in 1042, and Denmark passed to Sweyn II, son of Earl Ulf and Estrid.